ask you to write a piece for the contest?
Well, I was surprised that they asked me because I'm not, in a way, I'm much more in the jazz world, even though I've written a lot of music that's not improvised, it's notated. But then I started to accept the challenge and, to enjoy to try to write a piece that sort of was challenging technically, but also fun to play. And I got a chance to write a piece for piano and small chamber orchestra and one piece for two pianos.
So your first reaction was surprise, but then you accept the challenge.
Yeah, I mean, because in the sense that it's I would say maybe in the last 10 years, even though I've been playing a lot, I've also been getting commissions and people asking me to write pieces for them. Sometimes with me playing as an improviser while they play the notated music, and sometimes completely notated music. So it's something that I've been doing, and maybe, it was just an idea of what do you write for a situation like that? How do you approach that? So,
How did you approach that? How did you decide the type of piece you would have written?
well, I wrote the piece for two pianos first, and I wanted to write a piece that was had a lot of the aspect of doubles because of the two pianos. So sort of a dialogue between two pianists and a dialogue between two types of music, a very aggressive rhythmic music and a much quieter type of music that's sort of dreamy. And so the piece sort of becomes an alternation between those two types of music.
And regarding the solo piano piece?
The solo piano piece, I started to work on that later, and in a way I wanted to write a piece that had some virtuoso aspects to it, so the pianists really get to play, but also to have a piece with a lot of contrasts. So it's a piece that starts out in a very, sort of fast, aggressive way, then it becomes very sort of suspended and slow. And then in the end, it ends with sort of a bravura ending. So I sort of had the form, I was told to keep it about 8 minutes. So that's always a good thing to know when you're a composer, how long, because then you can sort of time it out.
Gives you the edges of the piece. What do you think about the fact that the piece remains so difficult to many pianists? Is it because your technique is much better, or maybe because they're not used to other type of music than classical music?
It could be all of those things. It could also be, the situation, I'm not sure I can play that piece either. I would have to practice it. So, as I said before, I'm sorry if I ruined their summers with them practicing. Some of the stuff that I wrote is definitely something that I would play, especially things that have to do with time signatures moving around or sort of playing different quintuplets against triplets and things like that, which are maybe difficult to people that don't play a lot of contemporary music, but really shouldn't be, because when we say contemporary music, we're talking about music that's almost 100 years old now, even more. So it's just a question of what type of music people are really interested in playing. And I understand also that in many of these competitions, and in general, many classical pianists really prefer to play Rachmaninoff and Tchaikovsky and don't really care so much about contemporary music, modern music, different types of music, which is fine. But I think for a lot of other musicians growing up, when there was a lot of different types of music coming up, not just one type of contemporary music, not just Berio and Boulez and Stockhausen when I was growing up, but also Zappa and Hendrix, and music from all over the world. And so in a way, things become much more open.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Maybe it's one of the problems today with the young pianist.
I think it really depends on what type of musicians, what people are interested in, because many of the young musicians that I meet are only interested in contemporary music. So in a way, maybe they have to balance that with checking out Tchaikovsky and Rachmaninoff. Because for me, I really enjoy it all.
Let me read you something. This is your September. USA, Germany, I'm talking about concerts. Germany again, Philadelphia, New York, Bruxelles, San Marino, Belgium, San Marino again, New York, Poland, 3 times. Well, a full concert month.
Well, that's a good month in the sense that, it's not always that way, but a lot of times it is. And for me, what's good about it is that it's a lot of different things. It combines composition. Some of those concerts that you're talking about were a new piece. I wrote a new piece for three singers based on Lamentations, with a flamenco singer and a gospel singer and a classical singer, and also a piece for choir. And then the next day I go and play with my group, and we play jazz and we improvise. And then the next day I come here to play solo piano. So
it seems so easy for you to change, to jump from one style to another so easily.
I mean, I don't know how it's, in a way, a lot of these things I'm, working on them since for a long time, since I was a kid, but a lot of them, there's a certain amount of tension and anxiety that makes me work hard. Even when I'm traveling around, I have to work every day on my music. So you just get into a certain way of thinking and working, and, bit by bit, you build it up. And then if you don't like what you're doing, you try to change it and keep on working. It's just a question of always rearranging what you have already.
Classical music, jazz music, Jewish music, it's like you're recapitulating your own origin or identity, your own history, personal history in your music.
Maybe it's just very natural because, especially as a musician who, music participates in many aspects of life. So certainly when I was growing up, I was playing, and I think it's also because if you're a pianist, you get a chance to play. I know that I had a lot of experiences playing with all types of groups, with choirs, playing for weddings, funerals, playing in the middle of the night. You know what I mean? All these different things where you start to see that there's all these aspects of the society where the music is part of it. And if you enjoy that, it's by osmosis, you absorb it. And, I grew up in Philadelphia, which was a very good city for jazz, but also for R&B, for soul music, and also for classical music, the Philadelphia Orchestra. A lot of classical musicians coming out of Curtis Institute. And when I was little, I started studying with a pianist who taught at Curtis. So I was, in a way, one foot in that world, but I also liked to go to clubs even as a young teenager and start to hear all the musicians that were playing, and I liked the freedom of how they were playing. So in a way, I gravitated towards that.
Great musicians have often great teachers. You said you were impressed by Bernard Pfeiffer. Did you ever speak back to him once you had success, once you got famous?
No, I mean, Bernard died when I was about 19 years old. Yeah, so he died of stomach cancer. He died much too young because he was a really amazing musician. So the closest that came is his widow, who also died. I mean, I keep in contact with her. I mean, in a way, a lot of the people that I knew in Philadelphia, was my first life, the different life before I moved to New York.
What would you have told him if he was still living, for example?
I would still have to be humble and modest before him. I can't tell him anything. I mean, I would say thank you for putting me on a certain path, but I don't think he would be so impressed. I think he, like a lot of musicians, just sort of tough. You work on it and keep on working on it. It's never at that point where you can say, wow, I did it. No, you keep on working. That's the way he was.